Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, September 16th, 2017, and I stayed up until well into Wednesday, September 6th, 2017, working on our audio, and I think I may have cracked the code. So now I am the world's foremost audio engineer. I made one thing work. It's pretty fantastic. I think I tested this pretty thoroughly, but there's no way to tell for sure except to do it live. And we're going to try and do that later on with Greg Dworkin. And then hopefully when that works beautifully, we'll be doing that with Joan McCarter as well. And I think the echo is gone, and I could try to explain it to you, but it would take the whole show. I moved some things around. I changed some inputs. And I threw a little bit of magic dust on it, and I think it's going to work. Justice says that our intro didn't echo as it often does. And so I think I may have worked the bug out. Not that it's going to stop the new computer from getting here. I believe I got notice that actually shipped. We may have that for Monday's show, or it may arrive Monday. That was more likely. Or more likely than anything, I suppose, would be for us to do the show and the delivery guy to arrive during the show and insist on getting a signature for delivery, and I have to leave, and I let Greg do the show while I go sign for the thing. How about that? That might work. Anyway, so far, no sign, for instance. The big sign I was fearing was typing from Justice. Everything's great except there's no voice. That would have been a real problem. But it seems like everything's working well, except, of course, the federal government. That doesn't seem to be working at all. Hurricane Irma seems to be working just fine. I need to catch up on some of the weather reports on this thing. Why am I seeing... I don't understand. They're saying things like they're recording wind speeds in the eye wall that are in excess of what a hurricane is able to produce. So... I don't know what that means. I mean, that's a hurricane, right? It's producing it. So what does that mean? Is it the highest speeds ever recorded? Do I misunderstand what they're talking about? It's gigantic as well as extraordinarily powerful. And, here we go again. Trump is already tweeting his excitement about it. I am sure he is getting ready to make his best attempt to autograph the hurricane eye wall as well. So I wish him luck in that. Of course, the media won't take him into it. So... maybe he'll just never reach the eye wall at all. I guess we could hope for it to destroy Mar-a-Lago and nothing else, but that seems unlikely at this point. So it's time to begin rounding up the news as we see it. Instead, Greg is already preparing his raft of stories. I'm a little anxious to see whether Skype is going to work for us. But then again, no rush, because if it doesn't work, I don't want to know about it. We're at that, what is it, Schrodinger's cat situation here. Right now, not using it. It could potentially work, right? And let's just leave it that way. Why do we have to figure out whether things work or stuff will happen? I don't understand the need for this sort of definitive answer, like or Bernie would have won or something like that, right? We don't need that kind of nonsense. That, of course, is occupying a lot of people's time. I think we'll probably not revisit that here, though we've treated it in the past. But I don't know. I think we'll let this one work itself out. I don't have any plans to read Hillary's book, but that's because I never have plans to read any book. Not because I'm a huge Bernie fan, but because I just don't read books, just generally. I read a lot of articles. If you excerpt it and send it to me, then I might accidentally read it. Or if you take a screenshot of it, that's the way to get me to read a book. Screenshot it page by page and then tweet it to me. I might be able to catch up on it then. Speaking of the hurricane, our front page story, our very top front page story at the moment over at Daily Coast, Hurricane Irma approaching Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, still packing 185 mile per hour winds. That's a lot of wind. We all have a bit extra wind these days, I think. We're having to remind the media that that's actually part of the United States, by the way. Yes, it's true, even though people in Puerto Rico speak Spanish. They are American citizens. Get used to it. I don't know how long that's been going on if people don't realize that. But come on, West Side Story. It's been a while, guys. Give me a break. All right, time to test our Skype. I can hear Greg. Let's see. Greg, do you hear me?
I hear you great.
Go. Oh,
and
right.
it doesn't sound like the echo is there.
Yeah, I think we did it.
Well, we'll have to see. The listeners will have to call in and let us know. It's impossible to tell on podcast because podcast was always good.
Yes.
It was the live stream that was having some issues.
This is the critical part. So if nobody says anything, of course, it would be it's true answer if you called in and said, well, you're saying the same thing you said yesterday because Trump is still, out of control idiot. I mean, does that count as an echo? No, if it's literally.
Well, I wasn't on the show yesterday, so it
true.
doesn't count for me.
Right. So
we're good there.
That's the big test. Okay. Although I gather you're going to tell me something about Trump at some point.
I will.
All right.
But yeah, we should start with the hurricane.
Okay.
Which is pretty big. I'm looking at the Tuesday night forecast. I haven't seen the Wednesday forecast yet. So it's a little too soon to see what part of Florida is getting slammed. But the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, it's going a little bit north of Vieques in Puerto Rico, but still it's going to be a pretty big hit because it's a humongous storm. It's basically the size of France.
That is big. Yeah, I've seen a lot of different size comparisons. Ohio was the one I saw this morning. France, Ohio, whatever. Everybody says the sound is good, so we're okay, I think, until the hurricane comes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm looking at the track, and it goes right past Cuba. And this particular model that I'm looking at, although it has lots of variations, it could make a sharp right turn and hit the Carolina coast. But right now, it looks like the most likely scenario is it goes through the Straits of Florida and into the Gulf, and then maybe makes a slight north turn and hits Tampa.
Oh, okay. Well, that feels like a very sharp turn, but maybe not for a hurricane. But on your map, it looks
a sharper turn would hit Miami directly and then go up the East Coast and hit the Carolinas.
Oh, so
this looks like it's going on the west coast of Florida into the Gulf. And then, going up Florida and into Georgia and Alabama.
Like that
or maybe
just
Louisiana.
That won't just keep going straight and go to Texas, though, will it?
It looks like it's going to turn. It doesn't look like it's on its way to Texas, but it could hit Louisiana. More likely is Alabama, the panhandle of Florida, maybe Georgia, maybe Mississippi.
It shouldn't be panhandling anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the forecast, but it's going to change. So, you have to see what happens by the weekend.
Is there another one behind it?
Jose is right.
Oh, Jose. Great.
So, we have Harvey, Irma, and then Jose. And, it's, again, one of those situations where it's been fun and games, folks, up until Harvey. But between Harvey and North Korea, it really matters that you have somebody who's competent and knows what they're doing in the White House. Unfortunately, we don't.
Yeah, that's a problem. Whoop. You hung up on me. Unless we're having, here we go. I think, did you mistake the mute button for the off button?
I did.
Okay.
So the good news, it wasn't you, it was me.
Otherwise, normally I wouldn't say anything, but, yeah, I'm just making sure.
But an interesting thing happened from a technical point of view.
Oh.
And that is that when I hung up, I have the show on iTunes.
Yes.
And so when I accidentally hung up, I was actually able to hear a bit of the show. And it turns out that there's maybe a 5-second delay.
Yes.
Between us talking and what I hear on iTunes.
That's true.
And so therefore, after I hung up, I got to hear my voice.
Oh, okay.
And when I got to hear my voice, it's much better than it was, but there's still a slight echo to it.
Okay. Well, we'll
much better than it was. Whatever you did, it's certainly superior.
Yeah, whatever I did, I hope someone tells me because I don't know if it happened at 4 a.m.
Yeah. But anyway, interesting stuff. So what do we have? We have the pundit roundup today, again, which is concentrating mostly there. But there's some other stuff that obviously is happening, too. Jennifer Rubin's been on fire in terms of her columns, wondering what the heck is wrong with the president, just what is wrong with him. And this particular one that I chose, Trump didn't have the nerve to make the DACA announcement himself.
Yes. Okay.
Which I think is fascinating. In other words, he really doesn't know what to do. And there was a piece in the New York Times that Jamil Smith pointed out suggesting he really didn't know what to do. He didn't know what DACA meant. He didn't know how many DACA people were in the military. He didn't know what the impact was going to be. He didn't know how many students there were. He just didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
And really wanted to get out of having to make any decision at all. He didn't want to do this.
This is
so what does he do? Because he promised his base he was going to do it.
Yes.
Which is the only reason to do this.
Yeah, of course.
There is no other reason.
Certainly, if you don't understand what it does, there can't possibly be another reason.
And yet, at the same time, he realized that maybe this isn't the greatest thing in the world. And, of course, everybody's tweeting the fake story. It is a fake story, but it's truthy, as Stephen Colbert would say. That, Ivanka was sad that she couldn't change his mind.
Yeah, that's my pinned tweet now.
Yeah, pretty much. But nonetheless, this was a true conflict because he doesn't really know what to do. He knows that if he does this, he loses the GOP to a generation who think that the GOP are clearly proven to be a bunch of racist idiots. I mean, this is Prop 187 in California writ large for the country. Let's not have any illusions about what this is. And there's plenty in the GOP who understand this. And I'm watching their tweets than ever Trump conservatives who are extremely upset about this. But then again, he doesn't want to lose his base. So what does he do? So he makes I'm not going to make a decision for a while, but he sends the House racist, Jeff Sessions, out to make the announcement.
Yeah.
Now, the end result is everybody's mad at him. The base doesn't think he's gone far enough and fast enough. And everybody else in the world, the other 70%, thinks he's a racist idiot. So he gets no props. And he was trying to mitigate the damage a little bit with his base, which is the only thing he ever cares about, by sending Sessions, because Sessions, as an avowed, clear, everybody understands he's a racist, can't possibly be on the wrong side of the issue when it comes to his base. It's just that it didn't work.
That is funny. It might represent the change in reporting approaches. It used to be that if you're a normal politician in normal times, and this is not normal, would be able to walk away from something like that and say, well, you know what they say in politics. You got the deal right if everybody walks away unhappy. But now it's just like, well, you just made everybody unhappy. That's because you're an idiot and you don't know what you're doing. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that worked for Trump. But he really, I was hoping you weren't going to say that the fake story and truthy one was the one about, I think I grabbed one from last night that was about, the aides in the White House say he really had no clue what this thing was and didn't understand it up to like an hour before the decision was finally announced.
That's a true story.
That's the true one. And the false one is that Ivanka had a goddamn thing in the world to do with it, or said anything about it at all. Yeah,
but she was disappointed, but decided to go along with it.
Yeah, well, otherwise she wouldn't be able to go on
vacation. But that's the pinned tweet, right?
Ivanka
was disappointed in Trump's latest decision, but decided to go along with it and then went on vacation.
Yeah, that literally is my pinned tweet. I have that Jared and Ivanka were privately appalled at blank, but couldn't do anything about it because they were on vacation and blank.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, okay.
So there's that. There's a fascinating poll out this morning from NBC. Trump-Clinton voters divided over a changing America. That's the headline. But the truth is, it's the GOP that's divided over a changing America. Story by Mark Murray. Americans who voted for Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are divided over the country's increasing diversity and different lifestyles. Over 80% of Clinton voters saying they're comfortable with the changes. Nearly half of Trump voters saying they're uneasy. So Clinton voters are pretty much okay with it, and Trump voters are completely split in half. Both sides.
Okay. Both sides game. Okay.
Right?
Yes.
These are the results from a new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll on recent social trends, which additionally show greater acceptance for immigration, globalization, and gay marriage. In other words, the GOP is on the wrong side of this historically, and is losing the argument. And this is a last gasp, from the rural conservative voters who don't like it, to try to stick their finger in the dike and stop the coming flood. Ain't gonna happen. But the social trends poll also finds half of Americans are concerned the government will go too far in restricting gun rights. That's an interesting question because it's 50-45. It's truly split. Everything else, not so much. 55% of respondents say they're comfortable with the nation becoming more diverse and tolerant of different lifestyles, gender roles, languages, cultures. and experiences. So in other words, 55% of the country are snowflakes.
Yes, that's sort of against the definition of snowflakes, but all right.
And 24% are real men and uneasy with these changes.
I see. Gun rights was an interesting addition. I mean, they do poll that all the time, but I don't know. It just hasn't been on the radar.
Let's just go with the general changes for now.
Okay.
Liberals, percent comfortable with changes in American society. Liberals, 85%. Clinton voters, 81%. Democrats, 77%. 18 to 34-year-olds, 69%. Urban dwellers, 65%. And overall, 55% are comfortable with changes in American society. I think the more interesting numbers are the other way. Seniors are 48%, rural dwellers are 38%, conservatives 33%, Republicans 30%, and Trump voters 28%. So Trump voters are worse on this particular question than rural dwellers, conservatives, seniors, or Republicans.
With the concept of comfort with social change, is that what
Yes. Yeah, they're totally uncomfortable with it. And they represent 28% of society. And this isn't a both sides thing. This is a small percentage of the country.
Yeah. I was going to say, so like meth and opioids, just keep them? Is
Yeah,
that
I
what they mean?
suppose.
All right.
The poll finds striking differences by political party, geography, and age. According to the survey, all those numbers I just gave you, the culture wars have been with us forever and they remain today. America has gone through rapid change, says Peter Hart. And the results of the Social Trend Survey tell us a majority of Americans are now comfortable with our increasingly diverse country. McIntyre adds, he's the Republican. But this sits at the heart of the Clinton-Trump divide. 81% of Clinton voters say they're comfortable with the changes, 28% of Trump voters are. Okay. 64% believe immigration strengthens the U.S. And even among Republicans, the trend is up. Was 34 in 2010, now it's 44. But for Democrats, it was 60% in 2010, now it's 81.
Okay.
Now, 50% are worried government will go too far in restricting gun rights. 45% say it's not going to be far enough. So that's a 50-50 divide pretty much. Huh. The difference there has always been on the intensity side. And the funny thing is that with this DACA stuff, I see occasional weak arguments made by conservatives that, this will all blow over in a day or two because you know how Americans are. They just can't keep things in their head more than a few days, and we're on to the next big story. And my response to that is we're still talking about Prop 187, which is what happened in California with Pete Wilson that basically turned California from a purple state to a blue state. And that's decades later. This is such a big deal. I don't even think the Republicans understand fully what is hitting them, is my point. This is not a 1 or 2 day story. This is a shift in how people see the parties based on whether or not you're racist or not racist, and that ain't going away. And it doesn't have to be in the headlines every day for it to be a constant and enduring issue.
That's so thoroughgoing we can say, holy shift. As a matter
holy
of fact,
shift.
I mean, it's a
huge shift.
Are going to holy shift.
They are, and it's again, it is the idea that this is only a 1 or 2 day story. It's decades later. We're still talking about Prop 187 and what it did to California. That's not a 1 or 2 day story.
No, that has to be longer. Well, by definition, okay. So, even if even individual people don't have great political memories, I mean, the political ramifications are still there. People may not know necessarily what causes it, but
right, exactly. So, how are things going for the election? Here's a piece from Real Clear Politics by David Byler, who's one of their analysts. Again, RCP leans a little rightward.
Okay.
And it's talking about Jeff Flake's reelection.
That guy.
And it's not like he's doomed. Yes, he's being primaried. He'll probably win his primary. Then there's going to be a general election. We don't know who the candidate on the Democratic side is going to be. Lots of Republicans are mad at him, but does that mean he loses?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
That? Okay.
Well, that's the whole point. It's not an automatic lock. Flake is weak. Flake is in danger, an endangered congressman, just as Dean Heller is. But it's not automatic that they lose. And so in analyzing the different pros and cons, we get to the point where David Byler agrees with you. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. But what I want to highlight is his last paragraph. Obviously, many of these factors could move in the opposite direction. Trump's approval could improve. Flake could draw a weak challenger. Maybe he'll find a way to win crossover voters or consolidate conservatives. But the larger point is that Trump, over whom Flake exerts little, if any, influence, will likely be responsible for the national political environment. In other words, 2018 is going to be a referendum on Trump.
Yes, I would think so. That would be difficult to avoid.
Last sentence, if Trump's approval doesn't change, Flake may have a real race on his hands. I mention this because there's two ways of looking at 2018. Gerrymandering and people segregating themselves by where they live means that the Democratic votes are concentrated in the cities. Even when it's big enough to win a state like Illinois, it leaves the rural congressional districts red. And so those sorts of structural issues make it difficult for Democrats to control the House. Yet, the political environment and the referendum on Trump may be so large that they still have a chance of taking the House, even though it's an uphill battle. And that all goes back to, well, what's the meaning of pardoning Arpaio in Arizona and then in the same week trying to get rid of DACA, the Dreamers executive order that protects kids who were brought here very young, and having Jeff Sessions go out and make the announcement. All of this is part of the whole that makes it that's W-H-O-L-E, although I suppose you could also say H-O-L-E, that is Donald Trump.
Not necessarily the whole, but it is a whole.
Yes, we can also say that too.
Right.
And so all of that, you can even say that in Rochester. So all of that has to do with how things are going to go in 2018. And Trump is just making things more and more difficult. When a wave election happens, you don't necessarily see it early on. You'll get hints. You'll get portents and signs and auguries, and you'll see the entrails and the knuckle bones and all that sort of stuff, and the I Ching. But when you look at some of the generic races, that is to say generic Republican versus generic Democrat for the House, in general, you're looking for an 8 to 10 point lead for the Democrats. That's what they'll need in order to take the House back. And some polls have that already. Some polls don't. So right now, we're looking at something that's a little bit closer to 5 or 6, and that means pickup of Democratic seats, but not House takeover. This will change with time, is my point. It's a little bit too early to take a look at that and see exactly where we're going to be. But right now, the generic tracker that people put together has only about a 5-point lead. That's not enough to take the House, but it's enough to pick up seats. That will change with time. And as we get closer to the election, we have to keep an eye on that and see how that changes.
All right.
Too early to say it can't be done. Too early to say it's a lock.
That seems, that seems almost normal.
Yeah. And so, and that's another good point that you bring up. A lot of stuff about politics remains normal despite Trump and despite the post-traumatic injuries to the reporters who don't seem to be able to understand that just because a black swan event happened in 2016, that the rest of politics is still pretty much the same.
I hope so. It's
well, how do we know?
say.
Look what's going on. We have this DACA thing. Everybody's really upset about it. So what's going to happen? They're going to make deals in the Congress in order to do something. It's not going to be a clean just put it up and vote. Nothing's changed. Neither McConnell nor Ryan want to put a clean bill on the floor. They want to attach some stuff. Democrats want to see if they can maneuver to get some advantage. What's changed? This is regular politics.
In that sense, yes, certainly true. What changes is having an insane president who doesn't know anything about what he's doing.
And therefore, something like this is actually likely to pass. That's what's changed. But the way it's being done is the same as always.
Yeah, I mean, we're here. It's the United States.
A lot of stuff is the same as always. And saying everything has changed because Trump won the election is kind of nonsense.
Well, yeah. At the very least, we can stop interviewing people about it and ask.
Some things have changed, some things haven't, and it has bigger impacts some places and smaller impacts in others, but sometimes in a fairly predictable way.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't object to another round of interviews if we go back, instead of asking them, are you sorry you voted for Trump, but you could say, so did you learn anything? Like, for the longest time, you guys were all so mad that elitists said things like, you can't elect a moron as president because it's important.
Too early. You're going to get the same stuff. I've already seen that on Twitter.
All right.
The far more interesting interviews that people should do is find the 10% of voters who are sorry they voted for Trump and interview them. And that's starting to happen. I think before we had our audio troubles, I was on the air talking to you about that focus group in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Where you had half Trump voters and half Clinton voters, and they interviewed the Trump voters, and almost all of them are really sorry they voted for him.
Okay. Well, that is good news.
I mean, that's the kind of people that you really should be interviewing, because their insights are, frankly, a lot more valuable than the ones who say, I'm sticking with the moron because you guys hate it.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's certainly more valuable. And we are seeing occasionally, I was talking with Armando about it yesterday. We gave it a shot. It didn't work. It echoed, but we tried it anyway. But each issue brings out a few people as well. There's been some famous pieces about people who lost their or stood to lose their health care and said, I didn't think he meant it. And, of course, same thing on immigration as well. My family, or I am myself an undocumented immigrant, and I just didn't think he was going to do that to us or not to the good people or whatever.
Yeah, I heard what he said, but I didn't believe him.
Yeah.
I love that. I heard what he said. I didn't believe him. That's why I voted for him.
Oh, I believe we've got to actually take our break here, and I missed our cue. I'm sorry about that. And,
it's okay. I'm ready.
Let this go. Well, I'll play some music, but I think we may already be out. Okay, welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. We had a little bit of difficulty, not technical difficulty. Just I buried my alarm that usually tells us when the break is coming. Got put under a notebook today, and I didn't see the alarm go off and give us the 1 minute warning. So a little bit of an awkward shift to break, but nothing terrible happened here. But all right, well, we're back. Greg is still with us, of course.
No blood drawn. I'm still okay.
Right, and you're not allowed to do that. Police officers don't come around. We didn't get a chance to discuss that story.
That was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it quite a bit because it was pretty incredible. And I did see this morning, I guess the latest development in it is that the cop also, all the cops are moonlighting, by the way. I'm betting that's a long-standing story, but
Yep.
He's a paramedic on the side, but I guess not anymore. It cost him his paramedic job. They're not sure what they're going to do with him as a cop, except take him off of the special unit that's apparently, that thinks they're allowed to draw blood anyway. But I guess you can collect blood samples when they're legally collected. They have a special unit for that, and he's suspended from that, and he's no longer a paramedic. And yeah, you got to think that's not going to go over all that well in the paramedic community, that you're assaulting nurses. I don't know.
You know, I've been actually in the emergency room.
Yes.
When there have been cops who wanted stuff from the patient, and the hospital was fairly protective of the patient for various and sundry reasons, sometimes as simple as the cop wants to interview them,
right,
or wants their medical records and requests them, which you're not allowed to do. It's a HIPAA violation. Mm-hmm. My point of view is basically these are normal, I want this, no, you can't have it kind of stuff, or each of the particular professions is just doing their job as they see it.
Yeah.
And it's really not a big deal. This was a little bit over the top, but it's not unusual for the cops to be in emergency departments demanding things.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
It's on TV all the time.
Well, it's on real life all the time, too. Usually you say no, and that's the end of it.
Yeah. I would think so. The part that goes wildly off the rails is, I'm going to arrest you for not giving.
Yeah, when they don't take no for an answer, it gets a little odd. But normally they do this, and you say no, and that's how it works, and everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
Because if you said yes, they would have taken it. And if you say no, they say, okay, I understand.
Yeah, or they go over and
No big deal.
and again on TV they say, "Well, fine, I'll be back with a warrant." And then you'll
Something
be sorry.
like that.
Yeah.
Something like that, but it's usually no more confrontational and no more angry than what you see on TV in that setting.
Joan has a comment on it actually, so she is listening. It's the ping pong game is over.
Good. I closed the door.
We got it right.
It was the dryer, and I just closed the door.
A little behind the scenes discussion there. Those of you who may have thought we were playing ping pong, and that's not a bad idea to just play a game during the show. It's the dryer. But okay, she says this whole thing didn't go very well with the cop community either. The victim they were trying to get blood from is also a reserve cop. I don't know if that was known to the Utah police. He's an officer in Idaho. But yeah, it didn't make any sense that they were trying to protect him as they were trying to tell the nurse. We took that apart pretty quickly. But yeah, that guy's going to be in trouble with a lot of people. So, not cool.
Not cool. So, I was reading this interesting story on CNN Politics today about Devin Nunes.
Oh, yes. How did we decide?
Apparently,
Nunes?
Well, we had it play 9 or 10 times on YouTube, people saying his name and himself saying his name, and I think it's Nunes. But it's he vents anger at Jeff Sessions over the subpoena and threatens to hold the Attorney General and the FBI chief in contempt. In other words, even though he's supposed to be recused from this sort of stuff, as head of the House Intel Committee, he's issuing subpoenas under his own name only without going to the rest of the committee.
That is weird.
In order to try to do stuff. The stuff in his mind seems to be, and in my mind seems to be, whatever I can do to slow the investigation down and screw things up.
I guess so. What is he? But he's
the House
subpoenaing-
Intelligence Committee issued a pair of subpoenas last month.
Yes.
Seeking documentation of whether the FBI or Justice Department used material from the dossier compiled by former British intelligence agent Christopher Steele as part of the federal investigation into possible collusion between the campaign of Trump and the Kremlin.
I see.
Nunes also writes he subpoenaed to discover whether information from the Russia dossier was used in crafting of applications to conduct surveillance under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. In the letter, which was signed only by Nunes and no other member of the House Intelligence Committee, Nunes explained that he was extending the deadline for responding to his subpoenas to September 14th, and then capped it off with a sharp threat. If all responsive documents are not produced by the revised deadline, the Attorney General, Director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, shall appear before the committee at 9 a.m. on September 14th, 2017, in room HVC-210 of the U.S. Capitol during an open hearing to explain under oath DOJ's and FBI's unwillingness or inability to comply in full with the subpoenas issued on August 24. August 24. That's recent. He's already recused. Why is he doing this? Nunes closes the letter by stating that if the Justice Department and FBI do not provide the documents, he will seek to hold Sessions and Wray in contempt of Congress, which is punishable with up to a year in prison. Asked to comment, Nunes told the CNN reporter, "I'm not talking to you guys."
Yeah, well, there's nothing to talk about. As I'm listening to it, this is a staged show of force. I will hold Jeff Sessions and the FBI chief in contempt to show how independent of the administration I am, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, the documents that he's looking for, well, probably, I don't know whether they exist or not. If they do, Jeff Sessions is going to be more than happy to have an investigative committee find out that the previous Justice Department used what they consider to be fake news in preparing surveillance or seeking surveillance warrants. I don't know whether that really happened or not, but Jeff Sessions wouldn't want to hide it if they did, so the likelihood of his having to hold him in contempt is
in order to get
small.
him to spill the beans is pretty tiny there.
But this way, I mean, Sessions is probably just like, I don't know, that's a stupid put it on the back burner or whatever. It doesn't have to be a high priority.
I'm busy rescinding DACA, leave me alone.
Yeah, in addition to which, I mean, we'll remind everybody, how does this go? So Nunes, although I like calling him Nunes just because it's not Nunes, we'll just do that. But he says, I'm going to hold you in contempt, which means what? That means referring a contempt citation to the U.S. attorney and asking him to prosecute his boss, the attorney general. How quickly do you think that's going to happen?
So Adam Schiff, top Democrat on the panel, said the pair of subpoenas were issued over his objections and are designed to undermine the claims about the Trump campaign about the Kremlin.
Yeah.
The subpoenas seek information about what the FBI knows about the compilation of the Russia dossier and coincides with a push by the committee to bring in Steele, the report's author and a former British spy. Now, Susan Hennessy on Twitter, who happens to be Lawfare managing editor and a Brookings fellow.
Oh.
So I follow her on Twitter. I think she's very interesting. She says Nunes' bizarre and egregious conduct over the past 6 months have eviscerated his ability to credibly lead HPSCI. That's the Intelligence Committee, I presume.
Yes, HP House
HP
House Select or Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. HPSCI.
There you go, HPSCI. Despite public elbowing and private intel committees typically function collaboratively on bipartisan basis, work is too important not to. What we're seeing now, at least on the House side, resembles a breakdown of regular order that threatens effective routine oversight. Conaway, who took over for Nunes, had privately won accolades even from Dems for fair-mindedness in taking over for Nunes. Nunes seems intent on burning goodwill.
Well, why not?
That is her
fossil fuels and goodwill.
Yeah, estimation of what's going on today. And it's just part of the background here. He hasn't gone away, and he still is sticking his nose in it and trying to screw things up. And I don't understand why they let him.
Yeah, I don't know. And we touched on this a while ago, and he started insisting. I never used the word recuse. I just said I was something else, stepping away from, or but then he didn't do that either. But I don't know. Maybe he was afraid that the word recuse had some legal connotation that he couldn't substantiate. But whatever it is he's doing, it's not hands off. That's for sure.
Right. Anyway, so that's Devin Nunes represents the worst of America. Here's the best of America. It's a story from People magazine. There was a couple who had to postpone their wedding in Houston because of Harvey. So they donated their gourmet wedding dinner to dozens displaced by Harvey and served the meals to the victims.
Okay. They should have just invited the victims.
Well, they didn't have the wedding, so they couldn't invite them.
Oh. Right. Well, okay. So the next best thing, they gave them the food. Well,
so they gave them the food.
That's expensive. Good.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, people are doing that all over Texas. And
yes.
They did that all over the Northeast with Sandy because people in general are good. But then, you have Devin Nunes who, isn't so good.
He flew in on a government plane and ate it all. What a jerk.
Probably. Yeah.
Him and Mnuchin.
Issued subpoenas as to what's going on here. It is fascinating also in background that Gary Cohn and Steve Mnuchin still work for Trump.
Yes, but they wrestle with it daily. Like Jared and Ivanka.
Yeah. And they are just like Jared and Ivanka, which tells you everything you need to know.
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, it's a hell of a time to be constantly having these internal battles and losing. Yom Kippur is coming, guys.
Right. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that in addition to the whole debate about what to do with DACA, people defined as such in terms of staying and going, but ICE can use DACA recipients' information in order to find and deport them. Part of this whole thing is they came out of the shadows and they gave their name, number, social security, and all that sort of stuff to the government as a good faith effort in order to get documented.
Right. And
now, under Trump, the government's using that information to screw them.
Yep. Because they're for small government.
Because they want to restore trust in government and make America great again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's particularly egregious, of course.
That's particularly horrible.
Yeah. And a lot of people probably suspected that might happen. And it's probably the reason, I think most people would imagine, would say there's an undercount of DACA eligible people out there. I mean, a lot of people had faith in the system and put their, submitted their requests and filled out their paperwork because they believed that nobody would be crazy enough to undo this because there was bipartisan agreement in many in many respects on a lot of the provisions Yes,
Lindsey
they end up
Graham
having-
says that he had a conference with Dick Durbin yesterday talking about a new move to push some Dreamer legislation.
Yeah.
And Lindsey Graham says, look, it passed the House, it passed the Senate, just didn't happen to pass at the same time, so it's not the law. But there is bipartisan support.
There is. And, it's going to be interesting to see how they, I can't even say it's interesting to see how they deal with it. It's going to be fascinating to see how they deal with it because the president doesn't even know what he wants to do with it. It's really amazing that
Right.
that's one of the biggest stories. And of course, the most horrible story connected with it is that last one, that they're using the very information people gave over because they were placing their faith in the American system of government, which is a big part of what makes people American, and now they'll use it against them. Very nice.
Right. All this information, by the way, is on the Pundit Roundup for today. And then the last piece I'll leave you with here is a David Leonhardt piece about George Romney and the time when the rich said no to getting richer, which is to say the taxes on the rich were so high that there was no point in getting paid more because you were going to lose it all in taxes anyway. So, give it to the workers. And now that the tax rate has been lowered, Leonhardt goes through step by step how that trickle-down idea has never worked and it's never helped the economy, and it's one of the biggest Republican lies for the last few decades.
I would take that piece. We have discussed that, and of course, job creation as the end result of something like that never did make any sense.
And he points all that out. So I just added that to the end of the
it.
list I sent you.
Thank you.
If you want to go through in detail, but it's a very, very good piece in regard to that. And one should not lose sight of the fact that everything the Republicans say they're doing for the reasons they're doing it are complete and total BS.
Okay.
Basically, Paul Ryan's agenda is a bunch of lies.
I'm in agreement there.
And there you have it. I happen to also have a kind of interesting piece. I do a lot with Twitter. You do too. And I find people on the blog complain about Twitter. Why don't you just go ahead and write it? So Politico has this piece called The Rise of the Twitter Thread. This is just for fun. Mm-hmm. The compelling incendiary literature form of the Trump era is the tweet storm. And this is a little bit of an essay about that.
How ironic.
Why didn't they just do a tweet storm about it? Well, that's in there. Threading tweets doesn't pay, and many threaders have been maligned as hysterics in mainstream media, had their lives threatened, been ruthlessly doxxed, and received death threats by trolls and bots. I think of threaders as white hat mansplainers. They persist with a heightened sense of duty as they see it to seek the truth about our times. Naturally, their raised profiles and lively styles have won them non-Twitter bylines. But dragging their hordes of followers off Twitter to a far-flung URL isn't always easy, as Matthew Miller tweeted this spring, urging his readers to try something different. Here's a 52-tweet thread from me on Trump crossing the red line, but it's a new format called an op-ed. Hope it catches on.
And it didn't. So
it didn't. It's interesting because the people who live on Twitter, and the people who write op-eds, and the only time that they mix is when the op-ed writer gets on Twitter and says, here's the link to my new op-ed, which in itself is useful, but it's a completely different writing style.
It is. And very often I see people do that and they say, they launch the thread, and sometimes they're not sure that they have such long form thoughts about it, but it just sort of spills out of them. And then usually you see the next day somebody not only says, here's a link to my op-ed, but I turned my op-ed or my thread into an op-ed and here it is.
Or if they didn't, I storify it and I clean it up for them.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea that it brings more spontaneity to the writing, and I like it, and that's where I spend my time. Well, take a look at that. I'll read it offline. I'm too busy for that.
I'll tweet about it.
Okay.
So anyway, with that, that's my summary for today. It's good to be back, and I'm glad that the sound is a little bit better. And the dryer has stopped, so even with the door closed, the ping pong game is over. Our side won, just so you know.
Excellent.
And we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do it again. This time maybe with the door closed from the beginning.
Okay. Very, very good idea. Or we could get a clothesline and just hang things.
It's raining. It's not going to work.
See, I knew it wouldn't work. Okay.
All right. Take care. I'll talk to you.
Thanks. Thanks very much. And thanks for your patience with our repairs here, Greg. How would I rate this call? It's a good day to ask me, Skype. I had a feeling you would know that today was the day to get me to rate the call. It was excellent. I loved it. And the ping pong was challenging as well. Okay. Let's see. I keep seeing people sending radar pictures of Hurricane Irma. Let's see, anything new? I don't think there's anything new about it. The wind speed looks to be the same. I thought they were saying something like they had to come up with new colors on the charts to illustrate how high the wind speed was, and that the red no longer did the trick, or maybe it was the rainfall. I don't know. One of the two things. Pretty amazing pair of storms here, and I guess I'm hopeful that Jose is not quite as threatening, but we'll keep an eye on things. Let's see. Here's a comment. Michael Musson was commenting on the Devin Nunes, and I really do think we should just intentionally call him Nunes and stick with that. But I don't know if I'm incapable of intentionally pronouncing things wrong. I think I do it by accident. Anyway, he's saying the committee is not trying to stop him, Nunes, I guess, because he is screwing up interference. Representative Schiff was like, Sessions under oath. Okay, yeah. Well, they're not likely to be able to stop him, for one thing. But yeah, I don't see why they would get in the way of it. That's true. You have it right. They don't care. I mean, if you put Sessions under oath, terrific. We're going to do it. I just think that Nunes has no intention of following through with any of it. He's just going to issue the press release threatening them with contempt, and then I think he'll just trot that thing out every once in a while. They'll just won't. I think he knows that they won't be prosecuted for contempt. I think he knows that a contempt vote of any kind would be an embarrassment because Republicans wouldn't know what the hell to do. And so Nunes would move that they be held in contempt, and then the Republicans would either refuse to hold them in contempt or whatever, or if they did agree to hold them in contempt, then you hand over a contempt citation to the U.S. attorney, and they just don't prosecute it, and then that's just embarrassing for Republicans via the Republican administration. So it doesn't do much for him. I think he just wants to say it and then have nothing happen and not have anybody pay attention to or know anything about the contempt process. And then any time that they interview him on television, say, and say, aren't you really biased in favor of Trump and you're trying to protect him? Why, no, I even issued a contempt citation against the administration. See, I'm totally independent. And I don't know if that will work, but it just might. It's a possibility because there's no other reason for him to be doing this. He's not going to get anywhere, and it doesn't do him any good if he does. So, I don't know. Let's see. Where were we we had a number of things I wanted to see if we can't get on the record. Here's, I think, one of the most brilliant things I have seen in quite some time. Except I don't know where I put it. Let's see. It's on Twitter somewhere. I retweeted it. And it's the background to a terrific story. And everybody's now beginning to talk about it. As a matter of fact, I can see the tweet, the most recent tweet in my timeline. Norm Eisen tweeting this, a senior fellow at Brookings and a CNN commentator and the chair of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, saying, this is devastating. A president for sale. Cheap, relatively speaking. Speaking, of course, of the USA Today investigation of how many of the Trump Golf Club members, members all around the country, he's got lots of golf clubs, are lobbyists and are essentially, whether they're actually playing golf there or not, paying emoluments to the President of the United States in hopes that word will get back to him that they're spending money at his club. The most amazing thing about it, as I see it, was, let's see, I'll find the tweet where it was first pointed out. Daniel Dale, no surprise that he would express things this way here. Trump-era journalism genius, he says. USA Today. How did they get this story? How did they were after a story of how do we know that, or how could we prove that lobbyists are just bribing the president outright by buying memberships at his golf club or dining at his restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. We've all suspected that that was the case. And it's not easy to get those records. And that's one of the most dangerous things about the emoluments situation here is, as opposed to looking at lobbying records or visitors' logs at the White House to be able to tell which lobbyists are trying to gain influence in the White House, those visitor logs aren't available to us, and lobbying hours doesn't necessarily tell us much about anything, or who people are registered lobbyists for. But if they're going to the golf courses and suddenly every lobbyist in America just suddenly joins like 1, 2, 3, 5, for that matter, different Trump golf clubs, or is dining out at the Trump International Hotel, you can spot them there. But how do you spot them at the golf clubs? Because you can't always, first of all, you don't always know who they are and how to identify them by sight. And 2, they're private clubs, and you can't just sit there all the time with a camera photographing all the guests. It becomes a real problem. Even Trump, so good at golf, he won't let you watch. You don't see footage of him golfing anymore because he continues to deny that he's golfing. So here's the genius. Trump-era journalism genius. USA Today uses the Golf Handicap website, the official, I guess, USGA online golf handicapping service. Every time you play golf, if you want to keep a handicap, you enter your scores at the course that you played. And each course has a course difficulty rating that helps them, adjust the handicap so that if you're playing extremely challenging courses versus extremely easy courses, it makes a difference in calculating things in the algorithm for handicapping. So if you're a serious golfer and you keep a handicap, every time you play around, you enter your score and the course you played it on. And that's publicly available because who the hell cares, right? Why would you be hiding that stuff? Now they're going to get all concerned about privacy, and they'll probably even have a point and look to hide these things. But yes, you can search people's handicaps, and that's important because, of course, people will come and play in a tournament, sometimes where there's money at stake or whatever. And if they have a real handicap and they lie and say their handicap is bigger and then they win the tournament, that's no good. So it's still got to be semi-public. So USA Today used the golf handicap website to search the names of lobbyists and find out where are they logging their scores. And as it turns out, by golly, a lot of it is happening at Trump's golf clubs. And isn't that interesting? And does that mean he's a disgusting, filthy, corrupt bastard? Well, it very well may. I don't know for sure. But we can read a little bit about it before we take our top of the hour break and see how much we get in here and see how fascinating this story is. Trump gets millions from golf members. CEOs and lobbyists get access to the president. Brad Heath, Frederica Schouten, Steve Riley, Nick Penzenstadler, and Amir Madhani share a very big, long byline at USA Today on this one, published today. Brand new news. Dozens of lobbyists, contractors, and others who make their living influencing the government pay President Trump's companies for membership in his private golf clubs. Of course they do. It's a status that puts them in close contact with the president, a USA Today investigation found. Members of the clubs Trump has visited most often as president in Florida, New Jersey, and Virginia include at least 50 executives whose companies hold federal contracts and 21 lobbyists and trade group officials. 2/3 played on one of the 58 days the president was there, according to scores they posted online. Now, I guess you could say, in fairness, it's hard to not play on a day that the president is there because he goes every weekend, and when are these guys going to play golf? Probably the weekends. But hey, it just happens to work out that way. How crazy is that? I will say this. There is also some confusion likely to be caused because, of course, these people are going to be concentrated in the Northeast, for one thing, or will be taking their vacations in Florida. And when they do, it'll probably be Palm Beach because that's where rich guys go to rub elbows. And if you're a federal contractor, you'll live here in the Northern Virginia, suburban Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. And if you do, you'll play golf. But there is this. I mean, Trump National in Virginia It's a nice course. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like the best course around or the best one available. There are legendary courses in the area. There are new courses that are fantastic and really, honestly, miles better than Trump National ever was. You could play it, RTJ, Robert Trent Jones Golf Club down in Manassas. You could play at Burning Tree in Maryland. There's lots of places you could be playing that are a lot better than what Trump has to offer, but they just happen to have chosen the Trump golf course. And golly, that's weird. Anyway, we'll continue with the story in full after the break. And then, of course, we'll be welcoming Joan McCarter here, our senior political writer at Daily Kos, to round up what is sure to be a chaotic September for Congress as they roll back into town. Oops, okay, let's see. I've hit the wrong button here, but hopefully it won't screw us up too bad. Let's roll in our music a little early this time and see what. Oh, look at this. Now, I'm afraid we might have opened another Skype file. I wonder if that was the last thing I wanted to press. Okay, well, we'll see how things go and roll the dice after this break when we speak with Joan McCarter. We'll be right back after station identification. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. We've had our top of the hour break, and oh, look at this. I'm getting some texts which are buzzing and vibrating in the table, but it's show related in a way. It looks like Apple updating me on what's up with our shipment here. Let's see. Apple Store. Today is the day. Items in the order were shipped. Of course, I got notice the other day. There's only 2 items. So the other day I got notice that they were shipping what I assume was the mouse, which is not difficult to format and send to me. And then there's only one more item in there. So a second notice, I am very hopeful that means that the computer itself is on the way. Great job getting that thing configured quickly. You guys should come, and I'll take you to Trump National Golf Course, and we'll all lobby the president over chicken salad sandwiches at the clubhouse. What do you say? All right. Where were we? I was critiquing Trump National Golf Course. It's nice enough and everything, but there are some really fantastic other courses where these people also, no doubt, are members and also play on days when the president is, for instance, if they don't want to fly up to Bedminster or if he is overseas, they probably then say, yeah, let's go play golf at a good course. And then when the president's going to be hanging around at Trump National, we'll make sure to be there, and we'll all hang out at the River of Blood Memorial Plaque and reminisce over old times that never happened. It says here, though, in the USA Today report that members of the clubs Trump has visited most often as president, right? We read about that, include 50 execs of companies who hold federal contracts, 21 lobbyists, and trade group officials. There are, of course, more lobbyists than that in the world, so it's not the hugest number ever. But 2/3 of them who do hold memberships played on one, at least, of the 58 days the president was at his various clubs. Because membership lists at Trump's clubs are secret, that's the fun part, the public has, until now, been unable to assess the conflicts they could create, which is a huge problem. But he doesn't care because he's so sensitive to the Constitution that he is repealing DACA because it might possibly be unconstitutional, and he doesn't like to do anything to offend the Constitution except steal emoluments. And also practice nepotism, and also disregard the rule of law, and establish a state religion. But other than that, please put that aside, because USA Today did find the names of 4,500 members by reviewing social media, where people love to Instagram themselves when they are at the club or see the president or whatever, and a public website golfers use to track their handicaps. Then researched and contacted hundreds to determine whether they had business with the government. The review shows that for the first time in U.S. history, and that's important, for the first time in U.S. history, let's give it some music even. Why not? For the first time in U.S. history, wealthy people with interests before the government have a chance for close and confidential access to the president as a result of payments that enrich him personally. Can we say it again? For the first time in U.S. history, wealthy people with interests before the government have a chance for close and confidential access to the president as a result of payments that enrich him personally. Can we say that again? This is not an echo, but I'm not going to say it again. I can. I'm free to do that for the moment in America. It is a view of the president available to few other Americans, but they have money, so of course. Among Trump Club members are top executives of defense contractors, a lobbyist for the South Korean government, although really, honestly, they should be seeking and getting as much contact with the president as they could possibly get, just in the interest of not being, the focal point of a new worldwide nuclear war. A lawyer helping Saudi Arabia fight claims over the September 11th terrorist attacks. Adam Bonin, have you heard this? My God. A lawyer who's helping Saudi Arabia because they need help. The voiceless Saudis fight claims over the September 11th terrorist attacks. And by the way, there's some Saudi Arabia news out there too. Not super important. We'll see if we get to it. Funny though. Who else is there? Also a leader of a pesticide trade group that sought successfully to persuade the Trump administration not to ban an insecticide that government scientists linked to health risks. I hope they're using it on the grass at Trump National. Just to prove a point. I wonder. Members of Trump's clubs pay initiation fees that can exceed $100,000, plus thousands more in annual dues to his companies, held in a trust for his benefit. And I think before we even go on any further at this point, we should point out that Trump has been involved in lawsuits over the initiation fees in particular at his golf clubs, where he has bought golf clubs that pre-existed as some other entity that weren't built as Trump clubs, which is what happened at Trump National in Virginia. That used to be the Lowe's Island Club, and he bought that and turned it into Trump National. And a lot of these clubs had initiation fees that were refundable to the members. In other words, you put up lots and lots of cash. It's still expensive, but it's refundable. But that cash is there, and they can pool it, and they can use it for maintenance of the facilities and keep the place looking nice. And then if you leave, they'll refund some or all of it to you. And there are agreements to that effect, contracts that you sign when you join. And when Trump bought them, he started saying, I'm keeping all of these deposits and initiation fees, and I'm just pocketing them. Those now belong to me, and I'm under no obligation to use them to maintain the facility either. It's a controversial thing. He's won some, lost some on that sense, on that question, but it's important because it's very clear. Trump has been crystal clear about his intention to keep personally the initiation fees and deposits of people who join his clubs, or even people who were members of clubs that he acquired. So it's very clear also that if you join one now, that money goes to his pocket and he knows it. That's on purpose. He did it that way for that reason. The arrangement, it says here, is legal, and members said they did not use the clubs to discuss government business. So that's good. And that's all I'll have to tell you about that. The executives of the federal contractors who joined Trump's golf clubs say they didn't discuss any government business. So that's it. Story's over, and we can talk to Joan. Hi, Joan.
Hi, Kagro.
There's really is actually much more to the story, as you might imagine, and maybe you want to discuss it a little bit too. But I would bet that they are not telling the truth when they say that. Like I said,
I would bet you're right.
Yeah, there are nicer, closer golf clubs to where most of these guys live, and they go out of their way to go there on the same day as the president to not talk about anything. Sure. I'm sure that's
now.
Exactly
are we
what I would
talking
do.
both Mar-a-Lago and Bedminster?
Mar-a-Lago, Bedminster, and Trump National, Virginia, as well.
Right.
So all of our defense contractors, some of them will live around here. That's true. But yeah, I was just saying from my own local perspective, the prestige courses to belong to for for government contractors and lobbyists and other various and sundry rich people have never really included Trump National before. There are some great ones in the area. They're well known and they haven't changed for a while. But all of a sudden, little old Lowe's Island Club becomes Trump National, and everybody's got to get a membership there. It was a pretty sleepy place. I mean, he bought it for a song because there weren't that many members there.
Yeah.
That's how come it was cheap. And then it became Trump National. Oh, let me see. It's the same course as before, except minus 400 trees, which he cut down along the Potomac River. And which, by the way, and they do afford very nice views of a now much browner Potomac River because those trees kept the brown out, but also, of course, the River of Blood plaque. There's that. That's attractive. And those trees, for people who played there, kept a lot of your golf balls out of the river. Now they don't. So you got spectacular views of a muddy river, a fake plaque. All your balls go in the river, and the initiation fee quadrupled. And it's further away from my house. Let's go. I can't wait because the chicken salad is outrageous. The clubhouse, unbelievable. And it's buried in this little residential neighborhood, 35 miles northwest of everything else around my house. And you got to drive up the infamous Route 7. Northern Virginia commuters will know all about it. Up and down Route 7 to get there. I can't wait to pay 4 times more than it used to cost to join it. And it's non-refundable, the initiation fee. The $25,000 that you used to be able to get back if you decided the place sucked. Now $100,000 non-refundable dollars. I'm sure they're talking about nothing with the president. Oh, look, the president's here. Hi. Have a nice day.
What a coincidence.
I don't have anything to say to you. Bye. I mean, that's how I would play it. But then again, I'm not a lobbyist.
No?
Well, no, I'm not registered. I guess I could be a lobbyist.
Okay.
Let's try that. There was for a while people have said, let's do we'll do a Kickstarter and buy a membership, and I can go play golf there and harass the president. That wouldn't last long, and it's a lot of money. And but
we could
it is close to my house.
find better things to do with Kickstarter money.
Right,
yeah.
Like feed people or shelter them or give them access to medical care. We should do that instead. Yeah. Well, we already do that, so let's just keep on with that. Our audio is fixed. That's
lovely.
If you would like to run your dishwasher at this point or anything, that would be fine.
Well, we'll see what the cat decides to do.
Small appliances you might have, lawnmower.
It's a big cat. He can make a lot of noise.
Yeah. Okay.
I originally tried to have him out of the room, but you can't have closed doors with the cat on the other side. So he's here with me now, observing.
Okay. Well, just as a neutral
because he's on this side of the door and the door's closed again.
That kind of closed door is okay though, if you're in there too.
Well,
or
he's not looking happy about it, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, maybe during the cat. I'm now speaking directly to the cat. During our station break at the bottom of the hour would be an excellent time.
Yes.
She can let you out then. Okay. So it is September. We're back in session. Devin Nunes is threatening, allegedly, to hold Jeff Sessions in contempt of Congress. But we all know that goes nowhere. Brad Miller back on the contempt beat, by the way, as a result of this new investigation. He's not been talking about Devin Nunes and his schemes, but more about the pardon power and whether or not the Arpaio pardon stands up in court and how absolute the pardon power actually is. But I thought I'd just bring up that name just as a blast from the past. But as for people currently in Congress, as I understand it, everything in the world is about to explode in about 25 days, only 13 of which, probably less now, are available to them to stop the explosion between then and now. Where do we stand with things and what's happening? And is anything going to get fixed? Pick any part of that topic or another one.
Irma is
okay.
Remarkably complicating.
Yes.
Because we have no clue how huge it's going to be, how much damage is going to be done, whether or not Congress cares about Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's another question. What an interesting way to start in on this question. This is great. Yes.
Yeah. There are actually more working days than I thought in September. I thought it was 13. It's 17.
Okay. That's good.
Now down to 16.
All right. So they were super productive for a day.
There are a lot of, there's Labor Day, there's Yom Kippur, there's things they have to not be working during.
Right.
Not that they actually work that much when they're there.
That is
but
true.
This month they have to.
Yes. Many things
there's
happening.
A lot going on. We've got Harvey relief. House is going to be voting on that money today.
Okay.
The House has decided they're not tying Harvey money to the other thing that has to happen, one of the other things that has to happen by the end of the month, and that's debt ceiling hike.
Okay.
Ryan acquiesced his conservative members saying, don't mess this up, keep it separate. Of course, the Senate is saying, no, we're doing them together. So I imagine that they'll work through that, hopefully. I don't see real concerted effort on the part of House maniacs to stop a debt ceiling hike, not with everything else going on. But it's always possible.
Ryan doesn't want them tied together?
Ryan did, but acquiesced to his conservative members who did not. Because that's what Ryan does.
Acquiesce.
Yes.
Well, to them anyway. Yeah. That's what makes the Irma thing that you started with so fascinating was Harvey was enormously complicating, and nobody was thinking at the time that they were working that out, like, what if we have another one immediately?
Nobody was thinking that, no.
That is pretty amazing.
Because we don't think a week ahead.
That's true. I mean, it existed.
It existed. People saw it and said, hey, this looks really big.
I mean, there's Jose, too, which I guess, I don't know what they're saying about it, but wow.
I don't think Jose's is big.
Well, yeah, this is the biggest.
But it's,
ever, but still.
It's not going to help.
But this, maybe, it might even pose this interesting, very interesting situation of, like, for instance, now having the Harvey relief up there and saying, okay, well, only the maniacs are saying don't tie it to the debt ceiling, and other people saying, yes, we should do them together. And, of course, we all remember the hypocrisy of Sandy recovery votes and the Republicans who said either no outright or said, well, we have to offset all the money, or you have to find cuts elsewhere if you want to pay for emergency money for Sandy. Not the case for Harvey. And
they were led by Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Texas.
Right. And so now, of course, he's getting the money, and, well, what do you know? You don't need offsets. It would be amazing and not at all beyond his capability to turn around next week and insist that, well, we spent so much money, now we need offsets for Irma.
Absolutely.
And that would be a really amazing thing, and it would be about as illustrative.
And perfectly within his wheelhouse.
Yeah. And imagine if, like, the bulk of the damage is confined to Puerto Rico, and for him to then say, screw those people. Now we're back to the offset.
Capable of doing so.
Yeah, he and a lot of others as well. I got a little expression of appreciation for putting the accent on what we otherwise call Puerto Rico.
Yes.
But I'll do a little bit of both to satisfy everybody and keep the show moving along.
You did that very well.
I took a lot of Spanish, and my youngest son now beginning his Spanish career, so I'm practicing again.
All
right. Well, that could be enormously complicating. An excellent point.
It will be remarkably complicating. Of course, in addition to this, we have to keep government stores open after October 1st.
Well,
yes, I should say on October 1st. Yeah. So a continuing resolution must be passed in order to do that.
Right.
The Children's Health Insurance Program is expiring. National Flood Insurance is expiring, and FAA, Federal Aviation Administration authorization, is expiring.
Wow. Without
all
which...
those three things apart from government funding.
Wow.
They have to be authorized and appropriated.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that needs doing. We were discussing the other day the slim chance. Well, it's really no chance, but the slim window that still exists for them to try to use the existing reconciliation instructions for one more shot at healthcare repeal or whatever you want to call it.
And Trump has made a little bit of noise about that. The House has made a little bit of noise about that.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't look like it's going to happen.
He's made a lot of noise.
Yes. The Senate is starting today in the HELP committee, the Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee, hearings on stabilizing Obamacare.
Okay.
And in fact, this is sort of a crazy story from the Hill last night. Tom MacArthur and Mark Meadows have said, okay, we're fine with stabilizing the Obamacare markets by funding cost savings reduction payments. So that's kind of wild. Mark Meadows and Tom MacArthur being two of the big repealy guys in the House, now saying, yeah, we could do this funding the CSR things to stabilize the markets.
Okay. Well, that is weird. Why?
Isn't that weird? I don't know why.
Yeah. I mean, these are usually guys that, maybe they just were bluffing the whole time. They really put up a front of, we'll tear everything. We'll see everything burn down before we do anything to help. And we don't care. And I'm sure there are still people who say that. But what an amazing thing to find out that they were bluffing, I guess. I mean, unless they have something up their sleeve I don't understand.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's remarkable. That's another thing that they could potentially try to do before the end of September.
Okay.
Because, of course, Trump is still playing with those payments. They could also be bluffing, saying, do it by the end of September in order to get Trump to say, okay, I'll pay out the rest of the year on these things and we'll figure it out later.
Could be, yeah.
Bizarre. Of
Very
course,
weird.
Trump has moved on to other ways of sabotaging the law that are probably at this point more damaging even than making those payments to insurance companies.
Oh.
Because in planning ahead for the year, the insurance companies built in the possibility of these payments going away. So it resulted in premium hikes for a lot of folks, hikes that were essentially masked for people because the federal government's going to be picking up the tab for most of them. So, because they get subsidies from the federal government.
They got us coming.
So they're really
going.
shielded from premium rate increases because the way the law was written in their subsidies.
It seems wise, actually.
Yeah. So that part of it isn't actually at this point the most critical to Obamacare. What is getting new people enrolled, particularly new healthy people.
Okay.
And the administration has slashed the budget for doing that by 90%.
Right. Yes, I did hear that one.
At the very last minute. The day before people were expecting the checks to pay for their enrollment outreach efforts.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
Do we think that's diabolically designed or like, oh crap, we can do this, let's hurry?
No, it's diabolically designed.
All right. That's amazing that they are able to put things together when it comes to being diabolical.
Yes. Tom Price, I think probably, it's a passion for him, and I think probably started in January plotting out all of the ways in which he could sabotage the law.
He would know. That's true. He knows where those levers are. Okay. Bless.
So this is going to be really difficult. Daily Kos in the background, I've been talking with our great folks in the campaigns team, Chris Bowers and Monique Teal, and we're reaching out to other groups to see, can a volunteer effort pick up some of this slack? Can we use our huge email list in trying to find people who will be willing to volunteer their efforts to try to help get the word out? And what can we do? And lots of organizations, lots of advocacy groups are doing the same thing. So you will see probably a big push from advocates to try to fill the gap. There's one really big problem in that nobody has the data for who is already enrolled in Obamacare except for the federal government. When we're talking about all of the states that are using healthcare.gov for their platform, there's a handful of states, of course, that did it on their own. They've got the data. They can do outreach to their folks. But for healthcare.gov enrollees, the federal governments are the only people who has their info and knows how to get in touch with them. So getting people to re-enroll, we're stuck. Hopefully insurance companies can pick up the slack there.
To think about that one.
This is bad because in all of the surveys done of folks who signed up for Obamacare, 80% of them really needed help. They said they just didn't understand how a lot of this stuff worked and they needed somebody to navigate them through it. And those navigators aren't going to be there this time. So that's bad. That means fewer enrollments. That means fewer healthy people. The death spiral the Republicans have been saying Obamacare would be in and it never has been could actually happen. If enrollments are as bad as the Trump administration clearly hopes they will be.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem that poses about how to get around that. I wish there's no USGA.
Well, one thing that could happen is Congress could say, if Congress is going to be really willing to stabilize these markets, and they say they are now that we're having these hearings, they could mandate levels at which the federal government must spend on outreach and enrollment.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
They say you have to spend this much money.
Yes.
Of course, the Trump administration could be very creative in how it spent that money, and probably
do
enrollments only at Trump golf courses.
Yeah, maybe. That's a possibility, right? Yeah, and you have to buy a membership to get in to get the forms.
Yeah.
So, I guess they could be pretty creative about that. That poses a real interesting.
This is a very difficult one.
That's a tough one. Well, maybe we'll all put thinking caps on and give it some thought. And if there's any chance of actually coming up with a solution, I would think, casting a wide net at a place like Daily Kos is likely to find you an answer or some way of prodding us along on a thought process toward an answer. We have some pretty brilliant people here.
We do. So send us your ideas, folks.
Get to it because we're running out of time. By the way, we're going to take our last station identification break in about 40 seconds or so. So we can talk a little bit about what we might want to do after the break, and you and I can discuss it, of course, during the break in secret. But we'll be transparent about it on the other side, no doubt. And I have a feeling some of that time should be spent on the Judiciary Committee. And
some of it should, yes.
Okay, so all right. Well, we'll hang on to that and play our special music that says we're doing something extraordinarily serious, which is a station identification break coming up right here for just 2 minutes. We'll be right back. And we are back from our super professional break. It actually went pretty well, I think, this time. Here on the Kagro in the Morning Show, Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Kos, is still with me. We enjoyed a little musical interlude. It was fun and serious sounding. But we're ready to begin back in on the last half hour of the program. When we left off, I had hinted that we might go to this story here. I think this is probably still one of the tops on your list, what's happening in the Judiciary Committee.
It is indeed.
Okay. So,
and what's happening is that Al Franken so far seems to be the only Democrat willing to say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't be putting so many judges through, considering this is Trump and he's making the nominations.
Yes.
We talked about, I think, before the fact that the judge coming up for the 8th Circuit in Minnesota, Strauss, I believe his name is,
Yes.
had not met with Minnesota Democrats Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken, but instead had met with Republican House members.
But the House doesn't vote.
So that was kind of weird.
Another way of defining the group that includes or is limited to the membership of Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar is the senators from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Party or not, those are the two senators, and the Senate is the body that votes on judges. It's automatic. That's who you go to. Even if you hate one another, you go.
Yeah. Because that's how it is done. Apparently, since that report, he has indeed met with Klobuchar and Franken, and they still say, or at least Franken says, no, he's far, far too conservative. He's far out of the mainstream.
I see.
And I will not provide a blue slip, which is kind of a big deal. We get back to blue slips. And the tradition of, apparently it used to be a blue letter. On light blue paper, the Judiciary Chairman would send the letter to home state senators saying, here's who's up, yay or nay. And the senators would click, put their check mark in yay or nay and give the letter back, the blue piece of paper, the blue slip. Franken's not going to do it for Strauss.
Okay.
And then it's going to be, what does Grassley do with it?
Yeah. Now, this was the practice that for a long time, the practice was that if either of the two senators from the state refused to return the blue slip or whatever, that was the metaphor that we began using. I'm sure that, I don't know whether they still use the blue paper or not, but if one of the two senators says no, that's a huge issue. And the rule in the Judiciary Committee used to be, well, that's enough that means you can't go forward with hearings until you get two yeses from the home state. And then
whether that means getting a new nominee.
Yeah.
Or more meetings between the senator and that nominee, or what?
Yeah.
It didn't go forward. Now, that tradition has been interpreted differently by different chairmen. When Orrin Hatch was chairman, he sort of decided when and if he would actually recognize blue slips.
Yes.
To our frustration, Patrick Leahy always honored the blue slip tradition. And that was one way we had a lot of obstruction of Obama's judicial nominees.
Yes. On the one hand, I guess you could say, well, he's consistent across parties. But on the other hand, he had just been insulted to his face by Orrin Hatch. And, his response upon retaking the majority in the Senate was to say, we're going back to a situation that will empower any Republican senator anywhere to say no to any judicial nominee from Barack Obama's desk. And so they did.
And they did. Now Chuck Grassley, as chairman, is saying, well, he's making stuff up again. He likes to make up history.
It's fun.
He's saying, well, traditionally, we've given more credibility to blue slip refusals on district court judges than on circuit court judges.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you know that?
I had never heard that. It sounds like something that you could spend some time looking into. probably only to find, wow, that's not true, but it's too late now because I spent all that time researching it. They went ahead and had the hearing.
So chances are Grassley's going to go through with this one anyway because it's a circuit court. And circuit courts are slightly more important. That's where the appeals go. That's where it gets bumped up potentially to the Supreme Court and conservative decisions can be made.
Yeah.
So when you're rebuilding a judiciary system for a president, circuit courts is one of the places where you want to start. And we're arguing that we really don't want the federal judiciary to be rebuilt under Donald Trump.
Yes, he might not know what it is or how it works or what they do or why it's important to put people in there that have maybe say legal training. Because you never know. So far, they've all been lawyers, but look what he's doing elsewhere. I mean, NASA administrators and EPA scientists that aren't scientists. So who knows?
Well, and those who have been lawyers and even judges have also been, conservative, crazy conspiracy theory bloggers.
Yeah, that's true too. You can do both.
You can do both and have. Was it?
Yeah, I don't remember the guy's
Bush.
name, but how can I forget?
He's not a Bush, but his last name is Bush.
Right.
Is one of them.
Yes, right. He was a nutty blogger. And, and he made it because that's all it takes now is to be nominated, and they can do it for anybody, for any judge at any level, by majority vote. And it's not by itself a terrible thing, but it has some unhappy results at the moment because we maybe kind of elected a guy who turned out to be completely crazy and have no idea what he was doing. And that's always a danger. I mean,
and it really is showing that he has no respect for the rule of law.
Right.
And we really, really don't want judges in place who are going to look the other way on the things that we know he's going to do in the future.
Right. A lot of things. And maybe Devin Nunes will now get concerned about all of this. He now is...
Well, who we need to get concerned about it is Dianne Feinstein.
Oh, yeah, her. Right, well, okay, that would have more impact.
Ranking member of Judiciary Committee.
Yeah.
Who made headlines last week by saying she thinks we need to give Donald Trump a chance to grow into the job.
7 months. But okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not growing into it.
Maybe somebody who's in their 80s could look back at somebody in their 70s and think that they can mature into the job.
That's it. Yeah, he's just a kid.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a generational thing. Yeah, you may have a point there. Could have used a little extra help maybe from Amy Klobuchar, too. Not necessarily would have been recognized by Grassley, but didn't she agreed, right? She's returned her blue slip.
Not yet, no.
No? Oh, okay. I thought she had at least been on record saying, we ought to have hearings.
I think she's probably saying she's still evaluating his paperwork.
Well, that's better. I thought that I had read early on that she was okay with hearings, but you know what? Maybe look, that's actually used to be the stock answer.
That's true for Strauss. I mean, that could be just in general. Okay. Yeah, we'll have hearings, which is sure a nice thing for Democrats to say if they want to sound collegial and like they're taking their job seriously. But if they're actually taking their job seriously, they've got to say, we need to shut this committee down.
Well, I hope
because
that there's
you cannot have this president nominating judges when this president clearly has no respect for the rule of law.
That would be what I'd ask her to do. I'm glad that there's still time to do it. I only got I read it on Twitter. Who knows whether that was right or not. You do. That's why we have you on the program.
We've got a lot of judges coming up in this first week because that's an easy thing for them to do when they're trying to figure out what legislative stuff they're doing. They can fill the time with nominations.
Yes.
And this is something that a lot of groups are working together on trying to shut down. And something I would certainly encourage people who have Democratic senators call and say, hey, how about we don't let this happen?
Okay. And is that like an official thing that we're doing or going to do, or is that still in the...
This is an official thing we are doing.
All right.
And we sent the first email test yesterday. This is something the Daily Kos community can really understand and get behind. So we've had good response so far. So keep it up, folks. Let's try to inject a little spine into particularly the Judiciary Committee members in the Senate.
I usually can check on whether or not it's an official thing, and that's capital letters, official thing, if I see a little widget in your post. Then I know. Okay.
We don't have the little widget quite yet.
So that fooled me.
Yes, we'll have the widget today.
All right. Well, she speaks with authority. Widget or not, she can tell you whether it's a real official thing or not.
It's a real official thing, and it's not. We've got a lot of partners in doing so. Credo, Ultraviolet, DFA, move on.
Okay.
This is a thing.
Excellent, and a good group to work with.
Because the judiciary is kind of important to pretty much everybody.
Yeah. That is true. I was thinking about it again the other day, and as we were talking about Devin Nunes earlier, and you were saying how much it affects, it occurs to me he's playing these contempt of Congress games, and of course the first thing out of the box in the judiciary was putting Ann Gorsuch's son on the Supreme Court. So I think that'll maybe affect the outcome if a contempt of Congress conflict between two branches ever reaches the court. I know the way one vote is going.
Yeah.
It's the old, you tried to kill my dad play. You tried to put my mom in contempt of court.
Yeah.
Well, family. It's important. What can you do?
What can you do?
Like Ivanka.
Like Ivanka. Hey, she's having a good run of things, isn't she?
Yeah, she's super influential. She's doing a great job.
Really, she is. This is something.
Yeah, they're privately appalled at a lot of things, though. It must be tough to be them.
Must be.
That must be
they can always
vacation a lot.
Yeah. This is why they go on vacation all the time.
Oh, my head. My dad is killing me. Oh, my God. Let's go to Vermont.
Well, besides, they can say they weren't there when he did all of these things.
We didn't know anything about it. Sorry. We were skiing. Okay. Well, let's see. What other items have we to discuss?
Well, there's always DACA.
Yes.
We've got a lot coming up from Gabe on DACA and how we move forward from here, which is unclear right now. We'll try to push for legislation. I frankly don't see Republicans stepping up on that one unless there is tremendous, tremendous pressure.
Yeah, and people are starting to bring that pressure. Now, we do have an advantage in this fight. Gabe knows what DACA is. And so, we got one up on Trump on that.
We certainly do.
So,
maybe when Trump figures out what DACA is and what it does.
Maybe.
I don't think that he's going to actually be making much of an effort to learn.
No, he doesn't do that. When he realizes he doesn't know things or understand them, I mean, I don't really know what his usual response is, but I've rarely seen him say, well, I misunderstood that and I need to rethink it. He's saying those things without saying, I misunderstood it, like by saying, well, I'll give it 6 months. Well, Congress will fix it. And if they don't, I will, which I can't, which is the reason I repealed it, because it's illegal for me to fix it. How did I get here again? What happened? I'm not really sure where he ends up, but I mean, it's weird. You almost have to come to the conclusion that he really, well, one, that he doesn't know exactly what the policy is, and two, that he may really be somehow internally conflicted about what to do. They're immigrants and I hate them, but they're the really unique class of immigrants, which is why the legislation had such wide support in the first place. And I'm on the record as saying it would be stupid to try to kick him out of the country. So what do I do? Well, maybe Jeff Sessions will come up with a better idea. In an hour, go. Or maybe, maybe this is another possibility for the victory of those mainstream establishment Republicans that the Bannons of the world hate so much, but who have such influence from time to time anyway in the White House. Now that, for instance, reports are coming out that it could cost the economy billions, trillions of lost productivity because they're the most productive people that we've got.
And you've got the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying, what?
Yeah.
And you've got Microsoft saying, come and get them.
Oh.
Which I was really astounded by Microsoft's statement.
Tell me more about that.
It was essentially, you want to deport these kids, do it over our dead bodies. It was pretty amazing. And I think that was the strongest statement from industry that we saw yesterday. But I think that you're going to see particularly high tech step up and make this challenge. Yeah, it was remarkable. And the thing that's going to matter to Trump, he's just being blasted by every famous person and celebrity that there is. Since, he cares about the famous people and celebrities because that's what he wants to be.
Yes,
that one might sting more than Microsoft.
Are they celebrities that he can dismiss as stupid Hollywood liberals or?
He likes the Hollywood liberals, though.
He does. He pretends he doesn't. That's another of his weird internal contradictions. Some of which
he wants to be
themselves.
One of them.
Yes, that's true. We read a story about that. Matt Damon told a great story about that.
Yeah.
You had to put him in your movie if you filmed on his properties. So, he's not above appearing in those films. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of information coming out about how much this is going to cost the economy. Even Cato Institute, I guess, getting into the act, saying
yeah, and this is where the people around Trump are going to be rethinking maybe the policy. Not Jeff Sessions.
Yeah.
He was practically giddy yesterday in making this announcement. I've never seen him so happy.
Yeah, he was cracking his smiles and during a lot of that, I understand. I saw a lot of screenshots. Don't know how much I can trust the screenshot, but it seems like the sort of thing that would make him happy.
Yeah, I watched. It was making him pretty happy.
All right. So, the worst thing since the Mitt Romney Benghazi smirk.
Yeah.
Okay. Smile-wise, anyway. So, well, yeah, a lot of issues swirling around that. And, let's see, what other, I mean, we mentioned that the use of the data for DACA registrants.
Yeah, that's the DHS has said, sure, we will use the information that these kids have provided to us when they register for DACA status to deport them. We will send it to ICE and they can use it to deport them. Yeah,
that was fun. Very Cambridge Analytica of them.
Yeah.
To do. That's difficult to swallow on that one. But let's see, what other...
Not surprising.
I'm trying to see if
I've also seen reports, and this is something that's a little disturbing to me. I haven't seen a lot of news on it, of ICE and Border Patrol staking out the relief centers in Texas, in Houston.
Yeah. We heard about that early on, that they were going to be continuing with their highway stops during the evacuation.
Yeah. And then I saw some, we had the release of statements saying, we're not going to go into the shelters and get anybody. But they never said, will we get them leaving the relief centers? And I've seen tweeted pictures of ICE and Border Patrol trucks outside of these centers. So that's something that we need to follow up on. But it's been a little chaotic in Houston. So I don't think that I haven't seen actual reporting on what they've done there.
That's a good question. Since, ICE and Customs and Border Patrol people have been like notoriously apt to go rogue on such things as we saw during the Muslim ban, the first passage with the Muslim ban, where, injunctions were being entered in court and they were saying, if the army shows up, we'll stop. But,
right.
And members of Congress showing up and saying, I have a copy of the court order on me. Well, so what? And stop. We're not allowed to talk to you. And stopping members of Congress outside the gates even.
Yeah.
So, I definitely don't put it past those guys. Those guys are, anxious, chomping at the bit, I'm sure, to do anything they can to grab anybody foolish enough to come, near enough to their trucks for whatever reason, like saving their own lives or those of others for that matter, as has happened quite a bit.
Yes. 2 DACA recipients lost their lives saving other people in Harvey.
True.
Gabe wrote about that yesterday.
Yeah, and no recognition of that, I'm sure, from the president. He's usually quick on the draw when something like that comes up, but if they're a police officer, usually. But maybe that's it. That's the whole thing. Is all DACA people have to become cops, and then he'd pay attention to you, except he wouldn't. So
no, because he doesn't particularly care if they're in the military.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty horrifying, and what they're hoping, I think, and this is the talking points that they sent out to members of Congress, to Republicans. These people can just self-deport. I think that they're hoping that the whole mess will be solved for them by these kids deciding to leave on their own, which I think that they are misunderstanding the situation.
Yeah, they probably are. Although I guess it's a conclusion you could come to if, for instance, you've been campaigning for office for the past 10, 15 years on the America is a Hellhole platform. Why wouldn't you self-deport? Oh, you actually love America like you're supposed to? Well, maybe that will change my thinking. No, it doesn't, bye.
No.
So, not likely to change much. Breaking bit of news, flash from Justice, who says that the vice chair of the Federal Reserve has tendered his resignation. Stanley Fischer.
Oh my!
Did not. That was not on my radar. We'll just briefly check in on that. Bloomberg has the story, and see if I can scan it while we're concluding things here to see if we can figure out why he did it.
Is he spending more time with his family, or is he fed up with Trump?
Well, I hope it's a little bit of both. Let's see. 73 cited personal reasons for a September 6th letter. So that's fresh off the presses there. And, there might not be anything else at this point. There's just simply personal reasons, which could very well be a euphemism for I hate the president. But you're pretty insulated from having to deal with him at the Federal Reserve. He's got no idea what goes on there, and he just meets with other rich dudes and decides the rest of our fate. So I don't know. It could be very personal, a medical thing. He's 73 years old, and could be anything. But at least we have the news. Thank you, Justice.
Thank you, Justice.
But we'll see what we can do with it. All right, and we're getting a little close on our time to wrap things up, and there's certainly something that they need you there to write about. What might that be?
Well, we've got a brewing fight between Pelosi and Ryan on the debt ceiling. Pelosi and Schumer said Harvey A. debt ceiling increase for 3 months. We're right there. And Paul Ryan is horrified that Nancy Pelosi would be demanding things. It's ridiculous and irresponsible, he says. Because, of course, Paul Ryan never played politics with the debt ceiling.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, I was wondering, what's ridiculous and irresponsible? She wants to raise the debt ceiling and relieve
But she only wants to do it for 3 months. Because, of course, there are things that Nancy Pelosi thinks that can be negotiated in those 3 months, and she's absolutely right.
Yes, okay. Fair enough. That's probably what she's thinking, and that's a well-established pattern established by the Republicans. And so why not use it like maybe the blue slip strategy? Pat. But okay, some people are resistant to those things. He's been there a long time. She's been there a long time, but I don't know. She's a little more adept at changing.
Adapting strategies. Yes, right. She is.
So, okay, I can accept that. Sounds like a good idea. And sounds like a good trade. We're going to have another hurricane that's going to need some relief. Who knows how many more are going to need relief. And then eventually the hurricanes stop.
And the entire West is on fire.
Right. We should move those hurricanes over just a little bit. Photoshop them
put
over
out
the
the
West.
Fires. That would be nice. Then I could go outside and breathe if that was the case.
Unless, like, the fire got drawn up in a huge vortex into the eye of the tornado. But there's a lot of rain involved, so it might still work. I'm designing the end of the world here.
I think that's probably not a bad scenario to be working with at this point.
Well, all right. We'll try that one out. See how that goes. They'll be working on this debt ceiling thing, and still, I guess nobody told them, and I guess we shouldn't, that you can raise the debt ceiling in reconciliation bills. But we need to have it raised, so why not? Go ahead, go for it. Read the rule books, guys. You'll benefit. We'll all benefit. The debt ceiling has to be raised one way or another. Okay.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
All right.
But,
we'll just drag it out.
Yeah. Right now, debt ceiling and government shutdown are pretty much not in the picture, but we could all be drowned or burned up by the end of September. So
I have some good news and some bad news. We're in better fiscal shape, but all that extra money is just fuel for the fire. Oh well. And it doesn't float. So, okay, well, I think that sums things up. It was going to be a wild and unpredictable September, both in the weather and in the Congress. Thank you, Joan, for bringing us up to date, and we'll keep an eye on it and check in again next week.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm glad our audio issues are resolved. Easier for you to think today. That's good.
When I'm not hearing myself talk back, yes.
Yes. Well, okay. It's a distraction. Thanks again for stopping by, Joan, and we'll pick it up again next week.
All right. Talk to you next week.
Okay. Take care. Appreciate your help. And time now for our fabulous closing music. It's all music, Joan. Take care, and let's see. Well, let's wrap up by warning you. I'm going to give you fair warning about what's coming up on the after show with Wink and Justice right here on Netroots Radio following the program. If you're listening elsewhere, if you're listening to our podcast, check out netrootsradio.com. Find their podcast so you can catch up on all these stories that I keep promising you each day. Here's what's on tap for today. 2 right-wing judges reinstate the Republican-backed Texas voter suppression law. Fantastic, right? That's exactly why you worry about installing these Trump judges. It's probably not even Trump judges at this point, but eventually we're going to have more of the same if we don't put a stop to it. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is scheduled later today to announce a multi-state lawsuit to protect DACA beneficiaries. And why not, right? All of this was reportedly triggered by Texas's threat to sue the federal government if Trump didn't repeal DACA. So why not use the same pressure on the other side? I'm in agreement with that one. And Kentucky's last abortion clinic heads to court to keep its doors open. On the last half of the program, they'll be visiting with Angela Marks, who you may know as Angie in Washington State from Twitter, for a political and world news roundup that is the epitome of fire and fury like the world has never seen before.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Wow, that's some promo for Angie, don't you think? Well, all of those stories, plus, of course, as usual, and I don't usually get to say it before we end the show, the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Kos Community Calendar, and even more stories on the After Show with Wink and Justice coming up next. Stay tuned.